Last autumn, I fell into one of the worst ruts I've ever been in. It took me about 10 months to finally feel like myself again. And to this day, I still feel like I'm mentally and physically recovering from the damages that my habits at the time made. If I could describe how I felt, I'd say it was like I was in a constant state of numbness. I wasn't really excited about anything anymore, and all of my drive to do anything or accomplish any of my goals were just gone. It felt like I was just floating through life, trying to get through the days. And no matter what I did or how much rest I got, I would always just be drained. I'm not really sure when it all crept up on me, because all of a sudden, several months had already gone by. I wasn't creating anything anymore, I wasn't working towards anything anymore, and the scariest part was that I was totally okay with that. Which was not like me at all. I was usually always anxious about the future, or wondering if I was doing enough. And although that's not the best headspace to be in constantly, at least it meant that I cared about something. But for the first time in a long time, I just didn't care. And it wasn't in a good way, like a I'm so content with my life type of way. It was more of a I don't care about anything anymore type of way. I didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel, nor was I even bothered to look for it. It felt like I'd regressed so far back, and all the work that I did to become the person that I wanted to become didn't even matter anymore. It's one thing to compare yourself to others, but it's a whole other thing to compare yourself to who you used to be and think to yourself, what the hell happened to me? It was confusing to see that I was arguably in a better place back then, because ideally things should have only gotten better from there, but that was just not the case for me. I think by now we've all heard the saying, growth is not linear. I will admit that a lot of times in life and on this channel, I preach things, but that doesn't mean that I always have an easy time with it in practice. For example, I know that I should stand up for myself, but that doesn't mean that it always feels easy when the time comes. And I know that growth is not linear, and not every single year is going to be exponentially better than the last. But that doesn't mean that it makes it feel any easier because I know the facts. And it can be frustrating because no matter how much my logical brain knows that this is normal and a part of life, my feelings and emotions always take so much longer to catch up. I don't think I'm in any position to tell you what to do to get out of this, but I will tell you my story in hopes that it makes you feel less alone. 2023 was kind of a rough year for me, to be honest. At the beginning of the year, I lost my grandma, and then later on in the year, I lost my dog. I'm literally sweating. Give me 1 second. I think the timing of everything that happened last year was what made it so difficult. And then during fall, I just had like a breakdown, and it lasted pretty long. I don't think I was like fully better until July of this year, which was actually only a couple months ago. It was just a very weird year for me, and so many things happened and I just couldn't understand why it was happening. So at the beginning of the year, my grandma passed away, and although it was a terrible time, I was a lot more open to receiving support from friends and family, so I was able to sort of recover from that. Spring of that year was pretty okay too. I was doing a lot better. I was working a job that was pretty decent. I was going to therapy consistently, and I started seeing people, which was nice because I started giving people that were healthier and more compatible with me a chance. And I mentioned in older videos that I did have an affinity for more avoidant and distant partners. I think a lot of times I joke that I used to go for avoidant partners, but that also just came because I was only like 19 and 20 at the time. I kind of grew out of that pretty quickly, so it definitely was helpful to go to therapy, but I think it would have gotten old eventually. And so I was seeing this guy in the summer, and things were going pretty well, but he ended up having to move. And at the time, I remember being so disappointed because it was like the first time that I'd given like a nice guy a chance, and it didn't end up working out. And I think it was hard because I really did have to make a lot of active decisions to be healthy in that relationship, and I just had to like reteach myself how to be normal in a normal relationship. And I was like, wow, this is different and a little bit weird, but in a healthy way. So when things ended up not working out, I was like, did I do all that work for nothing? Little did I know that he would not be the last nice and healthy guy that I ever met. I think just because it was the first one, it definitely was a little bit more disappointing. And so I was grieving that situation, and with the worst timing ever, my dog ended up passing away. It was a really hard loss for me. And so yeah, I lost my dog, and it just felt like before I could even grieve the last situation, I had to grieve the loss of my dog, who I literally had since I was 10 years old. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna take some time to grieve my dog. It's bad right now, but it's gonna get better. It can't get worse, right? And then it got worse. Not too long after, I had a falling out with a friend that I've had for more than 10 years. And I don't know, like within that year, it felt like so many things were changing in such a short amount of time. I was like recovering from one thing and then recovering from another. I just felt like the life that I knew was just not there anymore. People and pets that I had in my life for so long that I don't even remember a life without were not in my life anymore all of a sudden. And it was also fall, which is when my seasonal depression starts, and it was just a bad time. I ended up like disappearing off the face of the earth with no explanation to a lot of people. And that is an explanation, not an excuse. I should not have just like vanished off the face of the earth. I just had the worst mental breakdown during that time. And for a while, I genuinely felt like I was cursed. And so I was trying not to be around people as much. I just like put my head down and just like went to work and just got through the days. I remember when I was younger, I would see people who were like always in some situation, some sort of like either drama or heartbreak. I'm like, are you cursed? And then I was in that exact same position. I was like, am I cursed? Do I have like bad juju? Am I like getting some karma that had to come around to me? And so I just distanced myself from a lot of people that I really did not need to distance myself from. It was not the right thing to do, obviously, in hindsight. It just felt like what was right at the time. I couldn't be happy and I couldn't pretend to be happy. And I didn't want to be a negative person around people that I cared about and people who weren't negative. I usually always like being the positive one that can look on the bright side, and I could not see the bright side of things anymore. And I just could not be that for other people. And for a while, it just felt like I did not want to be around other people who were happy because A, it made me feel worse about not being happy, and also it felt terrible that I would like infect them with my sadness. And at the same time, it was also kind of hard to justify my sadness because looking at my life, I had amazing things despite the losses. I have an amazing family, I have amazing friends still. I have a roof over my head, I had a good job. I had every opportunity to do whatever I wanted to do with my life because I had support from the people that I loved. And I was like, there is no good reason that I can be sad. And so there's so many times where I just tried to push the sadness to the side because I'm like, well, look how lucky you are. And I think that just like suppressed my feelings even more, and it was harder to face them and actually grieve the things I need to grieve. And so I became just very numb. I was just at like a plateau. Nothing really made me super happy. Nothing made me super sad. I was just kind of like floating through the days and just trying to get to the end of it, which sounds so terrible to say. I wasn't even motivated to post anymore. So many things I should have been excited for at the time, I didn't feel as excited as I wanted to be. I was going to Iceland, which is like the trip of my dreams, and I was going with a really good friend that I love. I still had a great time because I was with one of my best friends, but I just remember in the summer when I booked it with her, I was like, I'm gonna vlog everything, like this is gonna be so exciting. When the time came around, I just was so out of it. I couldn't talk on camera anymore. I didn't like the sound of my voice. I didn't like the way that I looked on camera. Whenever I would like try to record something and then put it into Final Cut Pro, I just hated the way that I looked and sounded, and I just could not see it anymore. And it was such a shitty time because it was something that I loved doing so much, and then for some reason I just like didn't find the joy in it anymore. I think for a while I was literally considering never posting ever again. And I think another big factor that played into me falling into this rut was I was working a job that was good, but it wasn't working towards the dreams I had in life. And I think at the time, because I lost sight of my dreams so badly, I just didn't really even care. I think when I started the job, I still had a lot of aspirations, and it was fun because I was learning and doing things on the side. At that point, during the fall, I was so settled into my role. I didn't see myself moving up in the company, and I also was not pursuing things that were getting me closer to my dream. That was very, very draining because it just felt like I was working towards nothing. And I was just kind of like, okay, whatever, like it's comfortable now. Let's just ride it out until I'm like not sad anymore. Obviously, that is not a good idea ever, because if I just am complacent, nothing is ever going to change. By the end of 2023, and just for the whole winter in general, I was not in a good place. Mentally, physically, emotionally. Everything was just at an all-time low. I was literally at my worst in every single regard. I was the worst in how I treated people. I was the worst in what I was doing for myself. I was so far from who I wanted to be, and I was just thinking to myself, like, why? Why is this happening? I put all this time, I put all this money into going to therapy, into making myself a better person, into trying to build myself up to be something that I am proud of, and then instead of gaining anything, I just kept on losing. Like, it felt like I was doing everything right for myself, and instead of seeing any positive feedback or any results from that, I was only seeing losses. Like, I just kept on losing that year, and I think I was just so used to seeing the immediate results of my good behavior in the past. So having that be delayed was just not confirming anything to me. I was like, am I doing the right thing, or or am I not doing the right thing? Like, I'm so confused, so lost, and I did lose a lot. I think if those things happened separate from each other and there was a bigger time gap in between them, I probably would have been able to deal with it a lot better. But the thing that happened with the guy, things don't work out with guys all the time. With the thing that happened with my friend, she was a great friend when she was a great friend, but we were growing apart, and I think the friendship was destined to end. I guess I just didn't expect those things to sandwich the death of my dog, and I think that just like amplified everything so much more. I think those were like surface events that triggered something so much deeper within me, and I think that thing that it triggered was, I'm putting in this work and I'm seeing no results from it, and so am I doing the right thing or am I not doing the right thing? And it led into, am I actually even doing what I want to do? Am I doing the things that if I disappeared off the face of the earth tomorrow, I would be happy with what I've done? And the answer was absolutely not. And I think that was like such a big underlying part of why I fell into this rut. I just felt like I was not working towards the things that I wanted in life. And so 2024 rolls around, I'm still stuck in this horrific rut. The beginning of 2024 was also pretty rough for me. I'm not gonna get into that one. Needless to say, I was going through a rough time, and what happened to me at the beginning of 2024 was the last thing that I needed, but it also was what gave me a big wake-up call. And I'm gonna explain in just a second. When I'm in these ruts, it's very easy for me to see people who come into my life as like beacons of light or like glimmers of hope during that time, because maybe this could be the push that I need. Maybe they are the answer to whatever it is that I'm going through at the time. It's very easy for me to be swayed by other people and their dreams and the things that they think are best for me, which is very backwards, because when I'm in states like this, that is like the worst time for me to latch onto somebody and put them on a pedestal and be like, wow, they are gonna be my savior. That is how this is how Michelle Phan got into that cult. When I'm going through a tough time, almost anything feels better than my current situation. And so when people are telling me, oh, like, you should try this and you should do this and blah blah blah, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I should. Which is so terrible. But at the time, I just had such a weak sense of self that I completely lost sight of everything that I wanted to do, and I was ready to pursue this dream that wasn't even mine, and I was so ready and willing to give up my own. And that was a huge wake-up call for me, because I was like, why was I so open to just leaving everything that I wanted to go for this dream that I didn't even really want for myself? And although I'm grateful for the opportunities and the space that people try to provide for me, even at work when they wanted me to stay, I'm always grateful. But I really have to know within myself what the limits are, because eventually if I just keep on living for other people, I'm never going to accomplish anything that I want for myself. I was willing to go so far to pursue this thing that I knew in my heart I did not want to do. And I think if I had fallen into either of those situations, I definitely would have quickly realized that I am not doing what I really want to do with my life. And it was just so crazy, because I was actually so vulnerable at the time and so open to just hearing all these great things and just being like, oh, okay, maybe that is what I want to do. When you don't have a strong sense of self, and when you are going through some tough times, it is so easy for somebody to come in and tell you all these great things and have you believe them and just blindly follow, because they're offering you a situation that is so much better than the one that you're currently in. And if you don't know what your dreams are, someone will try to push dreams onto you. And although I don't think it's always coming from a bad place, it still is wrong for you, and that's all that really needs to be said about it. It doesn't really matter if it was coming with good intentions. It is not the right place for you. It is so important to have a goal or a dream or something that keeps you solid, because when you don't, it is so easy for you to be swayed. It is so easy for you to listen to somebody else and be like, okay, you know what? That's your dream, but it sounds great, so let's make it my dream too. Only you can really know if it actually makes you happy or not. And that's just something that I wish I had at the time, because I didn't really have anything to keep me solid. I really was just floating through life. And so yeah, that was a really big turning point for me, and the moment where I was like, I need to not be so easily swayed. And a big part of that is by building something for myself that I actually want to do. I think it's so important to build something for yourself that is yours and that you love, because when things are going wrong and you just lose your sense of direction, at least you have this thing that you're like, wow, I love this and I'm proud of this. and this is what makes me really happy, and it's mine, and I will keep it forever. What that thing is for me might be different from what that is for you, but always just make sure that your dreams are yours, not somebody else's. That happened, I lost sight of things a bit, and I was like, wow, I need to not do that. And so I quit my job. This has been a crazy year. For the first time in a long time, I'm hopeful for the next year because so many things have just been like, have just left my ecosystem. That's not the right word to use. So many things have like left my orbit. So I'm excited to see what happens in the next year. And I have not been excited for the future in a really long time until this summer. And so yeah, that was a pretty, not scary experience, but it was definitely concerning. Am I able to give up my dreams that easily in pursuit of something else just because it sounds appealing at the time? And so after that, I had to really just focus on the things that I really wanted in life. And slowly, things did get better. I think a big problem for me last year, looking back on it now, hindsight's 2020, I was looking at my year in terms of like wins and losses. I remember one night when everything was just going wrong. I was laying in my bed and I was like, what did I do to deserve this? I was literally like recounting all the terrible things I might have done in my past, and I was like, okay, maybe it's this bad thing that I did. Now it's coming back to give me my karma. And I was picking out like things in the past. I was like, oh, maybe I did this, and so like this happened, and then I did this, and then this happened. They are not related, okay? Yeah, maybe I've done some shitty things in the past, sure, but that does not mean that all of that had to happen to me. And within the year, I just kept on looking at things like, okay, this was a loss, this was a win, this was a loss, this was a loss, and then this was a win, and then this was a loss and a loss. And at the end of the year, I was looking at my tallies and I was like, wow, this year definitely was a loss. When I fail to consider that my base and my foundation for life is already so strong that all of these losses do not even compare to what I already have. And I know I was talking at the beginning about how I was trying to suppress my sadness with these things, but I think perspective also matters. This is not about like suppressing my feelings. I think I just totally lost perspective at the time. I was seeing so many losses, not even considering that I already was off to such a good start. I have an amazing family. I have amazing friends. I have a life where I literally can choose to pursue anything that I want to pursue. My life as a whole is already such a win and such a blessing. Sometimes I look too far ahead and I'm thinking about like the next thing, the new person that I'm gonna meet, the new opportunity that I'm gonna have, the new friend that I'll make. Just because I didn't have anything new that year doesn't mean that I don't already have such amazing things in my life. In 2023, I did meet some great people, but I also grew the connections I already had so much stronger. I did not see these things as wins because they were already in my life. There's a fire truck going. Is everything okay? I kept on looking for the new thing, the shiny new object that I could be like, wow, this is a really great thing that happened this year. It really blinded me from my life and how great it already was. And that's not something that I realized until recently. I've had an amazing year despite all the things that have gone on. And I think because they weren't these grandiose things, I just didn't really see it as a win. And that is something that I hope I never fall into ever again. A lot of things can go wrong in a year, but at the same time, a lot of things can also get better within a year. So please never lose hope and think that things are never gonna get better. They will. This car is really... If someone 1 year ago told me, just wait a year, things are gonna get better, I would be like, shut up. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to think that far. But it is absolutely true. A year ago today, I was at my literal worst. I did not think that I was gonna get better. And I was just like, okay, well, this is my life now. And a year later, I am so much better. So that's all I have for you today. This was 100% a ramble. So thank you for listening along. I hope you have a great day and I will see you next time.